In this video of the Historic Ordnance series, we're going to be looking at the Soviet, now Russian, MON-200 Directional Mine. Now, I'm going to throw this out right at the beginning here to get more information on the construction of this thing, to get an idea of what some of the parts look like. You need to go back and look at two previous videos that I did. One is on the Viet Cong DH-10 directional mine. The other is on the Russian MON-50 directional mine or Claymore mine. Now, for those that are not aware of this, the MON-100 and the MON-200 are direct descendants of an improvised mine created by the Viet Cong in the 1960s, known as the DH-10. Some examples of the DH-10 went through intelligence lines back to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union looked at them and they said, hey, this is a pretty good concept. Let's do just some minor changes to it. Let's start issuing it to our troops. And that's what it ended up happening. And both the MON-100 and the MON-200 are still in service with the Russian Army today. Now, this mine, the MON-200, entered service in the 1960s reportedly. It is being used by 12 different countries currently. Some of the technicals on it: the width of the mine from front to back is 5¼ inches. The diameter is 17 inches. Weight is 55 pounds, of which 26.5 pounds is the explosive filler, and the explosive filler is TNT. Now, in front of the TNT, on the inside of the cone here, is 900 pre-cut steel rod sections, which have a diameter of 10 millimeters, a length of 12 millimeters. And when this translates over, it really comes out to about 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch sections of steel rod. These sections of steel rod are held in place on the front of the mine by resin, and then the TNT is poured in behind it. There is one fuse well on this mine, which is on the front face of the mine. Now, the fuses that can be used in this are the MUV series, MUV series, and also the VPF series of booby trap fuses, along with the EDP series of fuses. The primary means for initiating this, though, for command detonation, as you see in the drawing here, in the picture here, is an NM electric firing device. Now, attached to all of the different firing devices used on this, you need an MD5 detonator, which will screw into the fuse well in the center of the mine to set it off. Reported temp ranges for this mine, because of the resin on the inside holding in the steel pieces to keep them in place, is -58 degrees to as high as 122 degrees. Safe range on this mine is a minimum of 50 meters to the side and rear, and you need to be behind cover. This mine is issued 1 per crate, and you see the size of the crate here. And inside that crate, reportedly, is 1 spike and 1 bracket. And here you see some drawings of the spike and the bracket, or cradle, for the mine. The mine has canvas carrying straps on it, along with 2 screws and wing nuts on the sides. Recommended emplacement locations are areas that channelize your enemy, such as approaches to bridges and crossings, banks at likely landing sites on rivers, landing zones for helicopters, kind of crisscross them across the landing zone, facing down narrow streets and towns, sides of narrow roads in mountains and forests. Intended targets are large groups of enemy soldiers and light-skinned vehicles. Now, the kill radius for this in front of the mine is 200 meters. It's actually a little bit past that, but it's around 200 meters. And at that 200 meter mark, the cone of shrapnel coming from the front of this mine is between 10.5 meters to 14.5 meters in diameter. So it covers a huge area. These mines really were kind of intended to take out vehicles, but as vehicles became more armored, it went to the standard fallback of it's just a really big claymore. Use it against large groups of troops when they're attacking a position or they're moving forward to attack a position. Put it on their route to take them out before they get to their rally point. Now, emplacement on this. First thing you're going to do, you're going to inspect an inventory. You're going to inspect the mine, make sure that there's no damage that will interfere with its use. You also inspect the spike and the cradle for damage. Make sure it's usable. You have all the wing nuts, all the parts that you need. You also need to go through, if you're doing this as command detonation, you need to go through, do a circuit test on the firing device here, also your firing wire, and your blast machine. Pictures of those items, go back to the MON-50 video. Similar items that are used to set off a MON-50 are also used to set off a MON-200 for pictures. Now, if it passes its inspection, you're going to have to take it to the location for emplacement. And as I said, these things are 55 pounds. So you're probably not going to want to pack it in. You're going to want to bring it in on a cart, on a pack animal, or inside a vehicle. Barring that, 2 people carrying it between pole, basically, you know, humping it jungle style through the woods, tied to the poles, balancing it between the 2 of you. Once you get to the location it's going to go in, you're going to choose the location where it's going to go. If it's going to go on the ground in this general configuration here, or if you're going to emplace it on the side, you're then going to pick a tree, a pole, fence post. It actually says in the Russian manual you can drive the spike into a crack in the rock or in a rock surface or a wall to try to anchor it in there. You want a secure base for the mine, so you need to make sure that that spike is secure. You will then attach the mounting bracket to the side of the mine. You will then attach the mounting bracket to the spike with this screw and wing nut up here on top. You're going to have them generally sighted in at this point. Don't tighten them down. Now, there is a sighting device you're supposed to make in order to sight this mine, and this sighting device is actually 3 pieces of wood. 1 piece of wood going across, 1 piece going up and down, with a large, about almost 1 meter long length of wood coming off the front. And on that piece of wood you're supposed to drive in 2 nails, which is supposed to be your sight. And then you're supposed to put your head in front of the mine, look down that stick, line up those 2 nails as like the sights on a weapon on your kill zone. Make sure you're pointing in the correct location. Another thing is, just stand next to it, eyeball it forward, make sure it's covering the right general area. This thing produces a massive cone of fire in front of it, a whole lot of hate, a whole lot of pain. So if it's pointing in a general direction, you're probably good. So then you're going to go through, confirm your sight. You confirm it. You're then going to go through and tighten up the 3 wing nuts to lock it in place. At that point, you're going to unscrew the shipping plug from the center of the mine, and you're going to screw in the firing device with detonator into the fuse well. You're going to run the firing wire back to your position. Now, most of the pictures I've seen on this from Russian manuals, they had the wire, instead of it going down the bottom here, bringing it up over the top and kind of wrapping it around the spike and then taking it back to the firing position to make sure that if the wire does get snagged, it doesn't do anything like pull the detonator out of the fuse wall. Once you are back to the firing position and everyone is out of the kill zone, you're going to do the circuit tests on the mine or mines. What you're doing then, you're making sure that there's no breaks anywhere in the wire or in the leads coming from the firing device here. Passes the circuit check. You then disconnect the test set and you attach the blast machine to it and wait for initiation. Now, I forgot to mention, the time that you're going to camouflage this is when you've got the wire in place and you're starting to string it back to the fighting position. At that point, that's when you're going to go through, do some basic camouflage to conceal its location, and remember to also conceal the firing wires so that the enemy would not see that either. Now, to remove this from being in emplacement for command detonation, it says in their manuals, find the firing wire, track it to the mine, and track it back to the firing position. At the firing position, you are going to disconnect the power source, the blast machine, from the wires. You're going to shunt the wires together. You're then going to spool them up to the mine, and then at the mine, you're going to remove the firing device and detonator from the mine. At that point, you go through, remove the mine, remove the spike, turn everything in for later reuse. Now, if you're going to put this in for booby traps, say you're putting it across a roadway and you're going to do victim initiated or victim operated, you would go through, do the inspection on the mine, get it set up whatever way you want it to cover the kill zone, and instead of doing the electric firing device, what you're going to do is you're going to attach in the booby trap fuse into the mine here. You're then going to go out to the other end of your kill zone that you're going to cover, find an anchor for your tripwire, tie off the tripwire, string it back to the mine. Once you get to the mine, you're going to attach the tripwire to the firing device. Make sure no one's inside the kill zone. You're then going to arm the firing device, camouflage, and move out of the area. Now, for removal of the mine, if it's set for victim initiated, such as booby trap mode, you first locate the mine, follow the tripwire to the other end, make sure there's no tripwire or mine on the other end. Then go back, neutralize the firing device, putting in the appropriate safety pins if possible. You will then clip the tripwire from the firing device, remove the firing device from the mine, reinstall the shipping plug if you have it, and then remove the mine. These things are massive. They are heavy. They are being used in Syria. They are being used reportedly in Yemen. They have been found in Afghanistan. They have been found in Iraq. They are being employed in Ukraine. That's just some of the general area where these have ended up. These things are huge. It's basically like a manhole cover sized mine for clearing a massive kill zone. It is more than capable of taking out a light-skinned vehicle. There are notes that depending on the thickness of armor on a lightly armored vehicle, it can potentially breach or heavily damage an MRAP or a lightly armored vehicle like an LAV type vehicle. Especially older ones like your older BTRs, the BTR 60, BTR 70s. It should be able to breach the armor on those, depending on distance from the target is to the mine. But if it's employed in the areas like it's recommended. Close in, channelize your enemy, such as the side of a street. You know, BTR is coming down this narrow street. This mine gets set off on the side of the BTR. It should breach the armor. So there you go. A Soviet adopted mine, not designed, because it was designed by the Vietnamese communists. A Soviet adopted mine still in Russian service today, and the Russian nickname for this mine is the Witch, because she can do magic and make people disappear. And that's even listed on some of the Russian sapper websites for why they call it the Witch. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot militia movements, always remember, essayons.